Hello and welcome to First Flight, a Star Trek Enterprise rewatch podcast where we are watching and discussing each episode of Enterprise in succession. First Flight is a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions Network.
This is Commander Tucker of Enterprise. We've got some information you're going to want to hear.
Hello, Enterprise fans. Welcome to the new season of the First Flight podcast, where we will be recapping and discussing every episode of Enterprise Season 2. I'm your co-host, Abby, and this would normally be where you hear our co-host, Melanie, introduce herself. But I need to let all of our listeners know that she has accepted a medical transfer to the NX-02 Columbia, and we'll still be getting occasional subspace communications from her when she's in range. And you will always still hear her quote Jonathan Archer at the end of each episode in our Moment of Melanie. Our shuttle bay is always open for her at any time, and we wish her nothing but health and happiness from the entire First Flight family. So this leads me into another piece of news, and I am thrilled that I can officially announce and introduce you to First Flight's new co-host, Chris. Many of you will know him from Twitter already. He's at Shelf Nerds, where his polls, prompt calendars, and micro treks bring joy to everyone. Or from his YouTube channel, Completing the Shelf, where he shares Treks for All Time, Why Voyager, and so much more. I personally can't wait to spend many more hours talking Trek with him. So a very warm Warp 5 welcome to the newest member of the First Flight family, Chris.
Yes, it's so great to be here, Abby. I can't wait to spend hours talking about Trek with you, too. With our voices, not just our fingers. Like on Twitter.
We've been orbiting each other for a while and talked together on other pods, but this is going to be a good time with us doing our own thing.
That's true. The first time was Trek Ranks, right?
Yes, the first time was Trek Ranks. So thank you, Jim Morehouse, for another fabulous pairing.
Yes.
So we've shared our Trek origin stories here on the pod and our special connection to Enterprise. And I know that I would really like, and I hope that the fans would really like to hear yours as well. So what got you into Trek and into Enterprise, Chris?
Well, my mom was an original series fan. She had a big old crush on Shatner. And she introduced our family to the TOS films. And then I was born in 1987, so TNG's always been in my life. So growing up was, laying in front of the TV on a Sunday afternoon, coloring and watching Star Trek Next Generation.
Yes.
Like my first memory is Geordi, Data, Picard leaning over the science station doing something. And that's just like a source of comfort there. Also, The Voyage Home was a very important film in our family because we would go on road trips, and every time we were on our road trip back home, we would play The Voyage Home in the car. So it's a special one in our family.
Road trip specialties are the best thing with families because they have so much meaning because they're so repetitive that you can't help but imbue every moment.
Yeah, and Star Trek, you can listen to Star Trek and you're okay.
Yeah.
Like you don't always have to see it because the dialogue's really good, especially in that film.
Yes.
Doctor gave me a pill and I got a new kidney. Favorite line. But then Voyager was the one that I remember watching from beginning to end. That's the only time we were allowed to stay up late. And we didn't watch Deep Space Nine because that was the dark one.
Oh, yes. I heard that.
I do have a vague memory of Benny Russell in the padded room or where he's writing on the wall. But I didn't catch that Deep Space Nine until some DVD collections and then on Netflix. But after Voyager ended, my dad turned the show on and said, "Hey, this is the new Star Trek. Look, it was created by Gene Roddenberry." And I was like, this just is not Star Trek. Like, this doesn't feel like Star Trek. And it wasn't. It was Andromeda. But he saw Gene Roddenberry and was like, this is it. Of course, then we finally got to Enterprise. I was like, okay, it has the weird song, but it's Star Trek. That feels like Star Trek to me. Although it didn't have Star Trek in the title.
Yeah, branding.
Yeah, but so that brought me to Enterprise, and it's pretty good. It lost touch here and there, high school and all that kind of stuff. Um, but then when I watched it from start to finish on Netflix, I was delightfully surprised that it was really good. I even texted my sister, who's just a casual fan. It's like, you got to check this out. It's a lot better than what we remember. So yeah, that's Enterprise.
Yeah, it's interesting how many different people have said that they've rediscovered it later in life. They didn't watch it when it was on for whatever reason, partly because the network it was on was dying as it was
Yeah,
on, so it was hard to find it. But that's a very common story to hear. Yeah, I rediscovered it later and wow, was it amazing. And I think it is one of those series too that sometimes benefits from being able to binge it and not doing it week to week, even in the beginning seasons when it wasn't a serialized story. You got some more of those character feelings over chunks of episodes. So it'll be interesting to see when we talk, since I watched it all obsessively first broadcast and had all those gaps. And I know you said you watched it here and there, but then plowed through it. It'll be interesting to see those perspectives.
definitely. I look forward to it.
All right. So we thought that since you are joining our First Flight family in season 2, we wanted to make sure to get a quick snapshot of a few of your thoughts on season 1 that we already covered, but you weren't with us at that time. So I am going to issue a read alert.
Tactical alert. All hands to stations.
There are potential spoilers ahead, and we might end up talking about any part of this series at any time, especially season 1. So you have been warned. All right. So, of course, the first question has to be, what are some of your standout episodes from season 1, Chris?
Well, you got to start with the pilot.
Yep.
I think it's objectively one of the best pilots in the franchise. It's tight. It knows exactly what the series wants to be at that point. And it's really throwing a curveball at fans with the Vulcans, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also building off of First Contact, which was immensely popular and such a strong film. So can't go wrong there. Then the Andorian incident. I mean, on top 10 lists for a reason. The intrigue, the reveal at the end. I mean, that episode relies on that reveal.
Yeah.
That reveal sets up the Federation.
Pretty much.
That's where the first piece of trust is earned between Archer and Shran. So yeah, you can't also underestimate how important it was that they're so eager to go down to that monastery.
Yes.
Right. Trip is like, can I go? Can I? Like, they just want to explore, and they're pure in their desire to explore. And I love that. Then breaking the ice. It's a low key episode, but I love how, again, it's very pure in their desire to just explore, and they get excited about a comet.
Me too.
I mean, especially comets with Vulcan snowman.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you think back to First Contact, when Riker's in Picard's ready room is like, and a class 5 comet or whatever. Like, they're like, who cares? It's a comet.
Exactly.
But Archer's like, it's a comet.
Exactly. It's all the tone.
Yes. And so there's something naive and innocent and exciting about that we all wish we could live in that moment. But I also love, with all of that, the poop question.
Yes.
And Trip's response.
It's perfect. And I know we both have young children, so man, that is an honest kid question right there. And I love that they put it in.
Definitely is. And I love that they're getting questions from a 4th grade class, I think, where, just like we would send questions to the International Space Station, it's so rooted in today.
Yes. That's one of my favorite parts about Enterprise, is how you can see that, oh yeah, we could take this step and then end up there from where we are now. And that is it feels very grounding.
And honestly, I think they lost some of that too quickly in the series. I loved the baseball cap that Archer wears.
Yes.
And their casual clothes are just like t-shirts and pant, it's none of those loose, open, flowy V-necks that Picard wears, which look great on him. But
yeah, the men in this series wear a lot of tight fitted t-shirts.
Yes. Yes.
And the women wear a lot of midriff bearing everything.
Yeah. Next episode, Cold Front. Gotta do Cold Front. It's so intriguing and exciting. This idea that this is a prequel sequel. And time travel is already interesting, but then there's these hints to the future, the Federation, before it even happens. So we, the audience, are in on something that the characters don't know. And we need to see how they get there from here to there, or whatever it is. So that's fun.
Yeah, that was the one that hooked me. That was the one that I went, yeah, you know what? This is my show, because I just adore time travel. And anyone who's listened to season 1 knows that I think the temporal Cold War is just ripe for exploration still, because there's so many possibilities and so many unanswered questions and so many ways to just pull that yarn ball apart. So yeah, this is a top episode for me, hands down.
And this series deserves that kind of fleshing out.
Oh yes.
Just like Voyager is getting a pseudo sequel in Prodigy.
Absolutely.
So then Silent Enemy. I love that one, but I used to think it was super boring.
Hey, it's the one that changed the most for me in my rewatch in season 1. Absolutely.
And it changed my view of Malcolm.
Yeah.
And it also gave me some delightful Hoshi. It's really a Hoshi episode.
Yes.
We all think of Malcolm and the pineapple, but it's a Hoshi story. And you're getting to know how resilient she is and perseverance, and how helpful Phlox is, and that relationship forming, And then those weird aliens, we never get any resolution on that, which is so good, I think, especially at this point.
It seems like it's one of those things where you appreciate that they didn't win all the time. They didn't make a friend. They didn't. That's so realistic that people say, "Oh, it's not the idealism of Star Trek." No, it's a little bit more what it might actually be like going out there, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's Archer and crew are just like, they'll roll up to any ship. Hey, we're from Earth. Here's exactly where we're from.
Yep. Want to share some of our food? We've got some supplies. How you doing? We shake hands. Hope that doesn't offend you.
Yeah, all that stuff. So that's fun. So I love that episode. It's super rewatchable and just comfortable. Kind of like Data's Day in a way.
Yeah.
All right, then I just got to mention Dear Doctor. It's one of my favorite series in the whole franchise. If you want to hear more, on my YouTube channel, Completing the Shelf, I have a video essay celebrating that. And but man, Phlox and Archer, and that decision that he has to make, and the relationship between them, where Phlox is just like, oh, I can trust him. At the end, it's wonderful.
Yeah, I think the scene in the mess hall with the two of them in that episode, where they're going back and forth about the ethics of everything, and Phlox admits that he had already found the cure, is one of the most powerful scenes of the entire first season. Riveting. And those two actors together, and the way that they lit it, and the way that the shots, that scene is goosebump inducing every time.
It totally is. And editing that video essay, like I got to hang out in that scene for hours.
Cool.
So you mentioned the lighting. I mean, it's so well done. The coloring, the costumes, and just the minute nuanced performance from both actors is just incredible.
Absolutely. And anyone who hasn't gone to see that essay yet, this is the time to do so. It is worth every minute of your time. It is beautifully done.
Thank you for saying that and promoting that when you guys did Dear Doctor. I think you guys brought that up then.
We did, because it's, like I said, worth every minute of your time.
So speaking of time, I guess we should keep going. Shuttle Pod 1. It's not as high on my list as like fandom says it should be. But I like it. I like it. I love a writing situation where two characters are just trapped and have to talk.
Yeah.
And so that's really interesting just from a writer's perspective. And I just love those shuttle pods. They're just an incredible
Yeah.
design.
Yeah. They're very detailed.
Yes, but they're again, it's that mix of today and
Yep.
future. It's very believably that mix. So, and the little wings that are there for no reason are really cool. I love them.
It's style, flair.
Yes. Yes. So then Fallen Hero. So Fallen Hero, I didn't even remember this episode at all until you guys covered it on this show.
Oh.
You and Melanie just gushed on it. So I'm like, all right, let me check this out again. And yes, I get it. The development, this is a critical episode in developing the Archer to Paul relationship.
Yeah.
So and we find culmination in that in a way in Shockwave Part 1 and more, obviously. But I really love that episode for that. And also depicting Vulcans in different ways. We don't just get the arrogant, cranky ones. We get different kinds of Vulcans. So
Yeah. Yeah, that episode, I mean, obviously anyone who hasn't heard it or wants to remember can go back and listen to what I said, but that episode, the performances, the costumes, the writing, every bit of that episode just sings for me. So I am so glad that we could give you a new appreciation of it.
Oh, I listened to your episode twice because I listened to it, then watched the episode. Then I'm like, all right, let's do it again.
Oh, well, thank you. That's a lot of me in your earbuds, so I appreciate that.
Well, I signed up to do this now, so
hey, I appreciate that too.
Yeah. And it's a gift, a blessing. Shockwave Part 1. My number one trek is TNG. My number 2 is Voyager, and they're so close. And Voyager is really known for its two-parters. Like they do some epic two-parters, but this two-parter is up there with the best of Voyager two-parters, I think.
Absolutely.
It is compelling. You go through an emotional journey like few others in this series. And everyone has a part to play. And I love that aspect of it. And then, of course, Daniels is back.
Woohoo!
And you get this temporal Cold War and time travel. And I'll say more in another episode. But yeah, I love this one.
Yeah, and we're going to pin that because we are going to come back for another little deep dive into Shockwave Part 1 with Chris, and we'll tell you more about that later. All right, so that was a great list. And for anyone who wants kind of a cheat sheet for Enterprise Season 1, I think you just got one. So talking a little more specifically about Season 1, after rewatching Season 1 or thinking about Season 1, what characters jump out at you and resonate with you?
Well, my initial response is Trip. He's just so charismatic. I live in Florida. He's from Florida. The accent is fun and familiar. Yeah. It's around me all the time. And he's really good at his job and he loves it.
Yeah.
Right. There's something about watching someone really good at their job who also really love it.
Yes.
And, TV doesn't really do that very much. So it's good to see someone that loves their job. And also I connect with Trip because of the loss. The Xindi attack is kind of what Florida goes through every single year with the hurricanes plowing through every state. Through the state. I never made that connection until right now. There's a hurricane right now going around. So yeah. So Trip and his loss there, I connect with that in Season 3. Phlox. I love Phlox.
How can you not?
I mean, I could see someone saying he's annoying, but not really.
Yeah.
He is like the best of Neelix and the best of Guinan.
Yeah. Yes.
In a way.
He probably shops at the same place as Neelix does because they have very similar fabric taste, which is one of the things I love about Phlox. He is not afraid of a bold pattern.
And the oversized top.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
tunic top.
All right. I gotta do a micro check between them.
Oh my
But
God. Meeting at Garrick's to get tailored.
oh,
Oh.
all right. So we're gonna pause the podcast right now, right? Yeah. No, I'll keep going. Flux, I love him. He's wise, he's silly, he's different. He provides this unique perspective. I love his friendship with Hoshi and the language
Yeah.
thing there. Um, yeah. And he challenges everyone. He
Yes.
reminds them what is good about them
Yeah.
as an outsider. So very interesting. Hoshi, I mentioned her.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I just love Hoshi. The the only Star Trek action figure I own is a Hoshi
Nice.
from Enterprise.
That's very cool and very random.
Well, it's not random because I think I've told you this, but I'll say it here. When you guys approached me to jump on board, I was thinking about it, and my brother and I went into a comic book shop, and there was a discounted, never opened Hoshi from like 2004 or whatever. And I'm like, there it is. I'm joining the First Flight crew, I think.
Yeah, that is a beautiful sign from the galaxy there.
Exactly. So I love how smart she is, brilliant. I love her growth from being, kind of nervous and just acclimating to life in space like we all would be. We all want to
Oh
be
yeah.
the Rikers, but we're really the Hoshis.
Yes, we are.
Because we're all brilliant. We're all really smart, but we're all,
You got to get your sea legs under you, but space legs.
yeah. Yeah. So love her, especially love her in Observer Effect.
Yes.
Archer. I don't connect with him much, but there's something bold about Archer.
Yes.
And just even now, when I say his name and think about him, I hear the French horn in his theme. It's just this the purity of it. I've said that word a lot. And I know you say Enterprise is in the gray, but there is this naive purity about it too, in many ways.
Yeah, I think it's the mix of the fact that they find themselves in the gray all the time, but they always have that ray of like hope and optimism behind it. And that's what pulls them through, even when there isn't a good decision. And that's kind of how I sometimes feel about my life. Like I end up in a lot of gray areas, but I always have this hope and optimism that I hope sustains me. So maybe that's the connection.
We're both in education, and we need that kind of hope to sustain us. So yeah, I really appreciate that, and how by the end of the series, he's kind of almost a statesman.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm dying for that President Archer series.
Oh, yes, that would be lovely. And if he doesn't want to have to put the uniform back on, there's so much going on in animation, because I feel like Archer didn't ever quite get the amount of respect and love and props that he deserves. He gets a lot of bashing for, well, nobody else would have done that. But of course not, because he was the first one to do it. So maybe he made a wrong step, but somebody had to do that to know it was the wrong step to be able to make sure they did the right thing from the future. And he always thought he was doing the right thing.
Cisco would have stolen the warp coil. Janeway probably would have too. Yeah. Anyway, we could go. That's a whole thing.
Yeah, that'll be a bit bonus mini episode when we get to season 3.
Yeah. Don't even get started about the Sim and Tuvix. But so Saval.
Yes.
I love the growth for this character. You hate him in the beginning. He just wants to end the whole program. He wants to shoot down Archer. But at the end, he has been won over. And that is so satisfying to have that kind of arc and it be earned. Yeah. And season 2, we're going to talk about a really critical episode for that, and one that I really love. So I can't wait to get there. But
he's such a fascinating character. And again, for not being on that many episodes, to have the growth and the change, and for us to be as invested in him as we are. And man, they just did the perfect amount of Vulcanness to him. The way that that the actor carries himself and speaks, the way that they
Mm.
costumed him in those very formal, traditional Vulcan robes at all times. He is such the Vulcan. And when you see him grow and change, that is so powerful. And to see he and Archer go up against each other, but also him going up against T'Pol. And then
Yes.
the three of them, it's a very interesting dynamic, and it's one that grows and evolves as there is more trust in all three of those relationships. So that's a really cool thing to watch for this season for sure.
Yeah, and and the parallel between Saval and T'Pol and
Mm-hmm.
their appreciation or understanding of humanity. T'Pol lived with humans in close quarters now on Enterprise,
Yep.
so her trust by the end of the season is there. But Saval, I could just imagine he hangs out in the Vulcan embassy all the
Yes.
time.
Yep. No
So
jazz for him.
no jazz for him.
All right. So moving on to our last big question here. After looking at season one as a whole, some of our big arcs of the entire series have started out here. So, which one of those are piquing your interest after watching season one?
Well, I think there's three, but two of them are just super important to me. The other one is there and important. That first one that's just kind of there is the Prime Directive.
Mm-hmm.
I love Prime Directive episodes. I never get tired of them. That's why I love Dear Doctor and what Prodigy is doing with it. But it is something that we've seen a lot. But that is a thread. So I like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the Vulcan human Andorian
Yes.
tension, that relationship building over time.
Yeah, that's another one of those triangles that every time one pushes, the other one pulls, and it's so cool.
It's the just delicious tension
Yes.
because you know where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta know how is it going there? Like what's going on with these Vulcans? Why are they this way? So I love that journey, and I don't know, you love the Andorians because of the admiration he has for Archer.
Yeah. They're very honorable in their very different way.
Yes, not a Klingon way.
No,
Yeah, they owe each other things.
exactly. And they hold true to their debts.
They do, and their freaking antennae move. It's the best.
Yeah.
Never
Yeah.
been
The first
duplicated.
time, no, the first time I saw that happen, I remember squealing out loud and going, oh, that's so cool.
Yes, I mean, me too. Me too. I mean, that might be one of the reasons the Andorian incident is so beloved. It's just that experience for the first time.
Yeah, maybe. That's definitely a part of it because it made them feel so much more real and
Mm-hmm.
so much more fleshed out just
Mm-hmm.
by that tiny little thing. And I know what a pain they were. And I know how the actors hated them because they were heavy and they were loud. But oh, wow, did it work?
Worth it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right, then the Federation plot, how it's foreshadowing that.
Yeah.
I really like that plot, and of course that comes along with Crewman Daniels and the Temporal
Mm-hmm.
Cold War. But also, there's a Venn diagram, and all three of these, overlap. The Prime Directive, the human, Vulcan, Andorian, later Tellarites,
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff. So I can't wait to see that develop throughout this season in season two, because obviously I've watched it, but talking about it in depth is going to be different. And I cannot wait to do that with you.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear your thoughts too, because it really is a different experience when you're going through and looking for it and analyzing it and finding all those little pieces. I have always adored Enterprise, but it's in my bones now because I just feel like I know it in a different way, and that's really cool. So season two is upon us. So
Captain Starlog Supplemental.
we have a slightly tweaked format of our show for season two. As you just heard, we will continue to open with a Captain's Log episode recap, and that will be followed by the brief discussion of my personal favorite part of an episode, the cold open. And then we're going to go into a slightly new portion of our show called Pros and Decons. Get it? Decons.
I love it.
Yeah, well, credit goes to you over there that you made it even better. You'll hear Chris's joke later, and you'll know it when you hear it. But our pros and decons will be a back and forth discussion where we each have an opportunity to share and analyze the parts of the episode that we really enjoyed and we would like to highlight. And our Porthos pick will be in there too. If somebody highlights it in there, great. If not, there's still a special section for it where we will highlight and send out our love to these little moments or those big themes of each episode. Then, if there are any decons that week, we will each share something in the episode that could have used some improvement in our eyes, didn't quite work for us, or didn't gel.
Yes. I'm reclaiming those awful decon gel scenes to be a dad joke in our podcast.
There we go. I like them more already.
Yes.
So when we're done with our pros and cons, we'll follow that with our usual sharing of trivia, our grappler ratings, and all the places you can find us with our contact information. We're excited about this new format. We're looking forward to getting into season 2 discussions. But however, before we do that, we're going to go back and hear Chris's thoughts on Shockwave Part 1 in a little mini episode dropping next. And if you want to go back and hear my thoughts and Melanie's thoughts, scroll back in your feed until episode 27, where we go deep into it.
My chronometer's running backwards, sir.
Incoming transmission.
You read my letter?
Regular listeners know what that soundbite means. Daniels has sent us back in the timeline to get your feedback. If you notice that we didn't mention it in our new format, well, you're right. We're doing it a bit differently this season. Instead of doing a little bit on every episode of listeners' Porthos picks, grappler ratings, and other fun feedback, we'll be doing an episode from time to time that will be dedicated to listeners' responses and our thoughts on them. So keep that campaign for Andorian emojis coming.
Woo!
We call these our mailbag episodes. And we just absolutely adore the interaction with our listeners and want to give this portion of a bit more of a special place in our podcast. So please keep sending in your thoughts and picks. We'll save them for the big discussion episodes and really just relish them then.
Accessing library computer data.
Well, it wouldn't be the First Flight podcast if we didn't give you a bit of fun trivia before we're done today. So here's one that really got me going for how our grappler ratings will shake out by the end of this season. Because Enterprise Season 2 is often cited as its weakest season, but on IMDb, it shows that out of the 26 episodes of Season 2, there are 16 that rate 7 or higher, 10 that rate 7.5 or higher, and 6 that rate 8 or higher. And what that tells me is there is a ton of good stuff to talk about coming our way soon. Any thoughts on the stats, Chris?
I don't know where that, idea came from that it's weak. Personally, there's a lot of some of my favorite episodes are in this season. And so it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. And I love rating things and I love seeing what other people rate them as. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And it's interesting at the end to crunch all the numbers and go, oh, and see what surprises you and what totally doesn't.
Yes. Well, we want to thank you for joining us for this preview episode of our Season 2 coverage. But before we kick it up to Warp 5 in Season 2, Abby, what do you think? Could we chat about Shockwave Part 1 first, please?
Absolutely. As I alluded to, there is a big conversation about that coming.
So coming out next week will be a mini look back at Shockwave Part 1. Then you can expect our episode covering Shockwave Part 2, the first episode of Season 2, dropping about 2 weeks from there. After that, we'll be releasing episodes about twice per month. Until then, you can find me on Twitter at ShelfNerds and on my YouTube channel, which is Completing the Shelf. Abby, where can people find and contact you?
You can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Abby M. Summer. That's SOMMER. And you can find the podcast at First Flight Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can listen and subscribe to this show on the following platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and most other major platforms. Please note that on YouTube only, we do not have an individual First Flight feed, but we can be found under the Tricorder Transmissions channel, and so can a bunch of other really great shows that you could check out. So thanks again to all of our First Flight friends for your patience in hanging with us over our hiatus. We are so excited to discuss season 2 with you. And finally, as always, we leave you with this quote from Captain Jonathan Archer and your moment of Melanie.
The most profound discoveries are not necessarily beyond that next star. They're within us, woven into the threads that bind us, all of us, to each other.